Welcome to my channel Deep Sleep Mission-DSM. As we begin, I would be delighted if you could share your location in the comments below. It's truly inspiring to witness how far this content travels and to connect with viewers from across the world. The GPS died at exactly 11:47 p.m. Not gradually, not with a warning, just black, dead. Like someone had reached through the screen and switched off reality itself. I should have turned back right then, should have listened to that cold twist in my gut. But Bridgewater was only 12 miles away, and I'd driven these Massachusetts back roads 100 times before. What could possibly go wrong? Before I tell you what happened that October night, before I explain why I'll never drive through Bridgewater again, I need you to understand something. What you're about to hear isn't some campfire tale. This happened 3 weeks ago, and if you live anywhere near southeastern Massachusetts, you need to know what's happening out there. Because the triangle, it's not staying where it's supposed to anymore. Hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more stories like this. And please, if you've experienced something similar, leave a comment below. I need to know I'm not alone in this. Now, let the story begin. The leaves were doing that New England thing, you know, where they crunch under your tires like tiny bones breaking. I'd left Boston around 10:30, later than planned. My sister Sarah had called earlier that day, something in her voice that made my skin crawl. Just come home, okay? Tonight, please. She lived in Raynham, right on the edge of what locals whispered about but never discussed openly. The Bridgewater Triangle. 200 square miles of Massachusetts that shouldn't exist the way it does. But growing up there, you learn to live with the strange. You learn to look the other way when shadows move wrong. You learn not to ask questions about the sounds in the Hockomock Swamp. The radio was playing that new Taylor Swift song when it happened. 1 second, clear reception. The next, static, but not normal static. It had a pattern to it. Like breathing, like something massive was inhaling and exhaling through the speakers. I reached over to change the station, nothing but that breathing static on every frequency, even the emergency broadcast channel, especially the emergency broadcast channel. That's when I noticed the other cars, or the lack of them. Route 44 is never empty. Never. It's the main artery between Providence and Plymouth. Even at midnight, you'll see truckers, late-night commuters, teenagers heading home from parties. But for the last 5 minutes, nothing. Just me, my dying Honda Civic, and that breathing static. The temperature gauge on my dashboard read 34 degrees. October in Massachusetts, nothing unusual, but I could see my breath. Inside the car, with the heat on full blast. Then the GPS flickered back to life. For just a second, long enough to show my location. I wasn't on Route 44 anymore. According to the screen, I was in the middle of the Hockomock Swamp, 3 miles from the nearest road. But I could see the asphalt under my headlights, could feel the solid yellow lines as my tires drifted slightly left. The GPS died again, this time for good. That's when I saw the first one. Standing in the middle of the road, maybe 50 yards ahead. At first I thought, deer. Massachusetts is lousy with deer. They'll stand in your headlights like they're posing for a portrait, completely oblivious to 2 tons of metal barreling toward them. But deer don't stand on 2 legs, and they definitely don't wave. I slammed the brakes. The Civic skidded, fishtailed slightly, stopped maybe 20 feet from the figure. My high beams lit it up like a stage spotlight, and I wished they hadn't. It looked like someone had tried to draw a person from memory, after forgetting what people actually looked like. The proportions were off, arms too long, torso too short, and the face. Have you ever seen a mask that's almost human but not quite? That uncanny valley thing that makes your brain scream wrong, wrong, wrong? That was this thing's actual face. like skin stretched over a framework that didn't quite match human bone structure. It waved again, slow, deliberate, the way you'd wave to a friend across a parking lot. Casual, familiar. Then it smiled, too many teeth, way too many teeth. I threw the car in reverse, didn't even look behind me, just floored it backward into the darkness. The thing didn't chase, didn't move at all, just stood there, waving and smiling until the darkness swallowed it whole. When I finally stopped, hands shaking so bad I could barely grip the wheel, I realized something that made my blood turn to slush. The road behind me. It wasn't the road I'd driven down. The yellow lines were gone, the asphalt had turned to packed dirt, and the trees, Massachusetts pines and oaks, had been replaced by something else, something with bark that seemed to pulse in my headlights, something with branches that moved without wind. I was still in my car, still in Massachusetts, but I wasn't in my Massachusetts anymore. The triangle had expanded, and I was inside it. My phone had no signal. The clock on the dashboard had stopped at 11:47. And somewhere in the darkness, I could hear footsteps. Not walking, not running, dancing. Something was dancing in the dark, just beyond the reach of my headlights, and it was getting closer. I did the only thing that made sense. I drove. Didn't matter which direction. Forward was away from the waving thing, and that was good enough for me. The dirt road wound through those wrong trees like a snake's spine, and my headlights kept catching things that shouldn't exist. A mailbox, normal enough, except the name on it changed every time I looked. Peterson, Rodriguez, Kim, Thompson, all different handwriting, all fresh paint. A stop sign that was octagonal on one side, triangular when I passed it. A house, just one. Sitting perfect and pristine like it had been cut from a 1950s magazine and pasted into this nightmare. White picket fence, porch swing moving in the no wind, and every single window glowing with that warm, honey-colored light that meant family and safety and home. I almost stopped. God help me. I almost stopped. The urge was like a fishhook in my chest, pulling me toward that front door. But then I saw the shadows moving inside. Too tall, too angular, and they were all looking out, all of them, pressed against the windows like kids watching for Santa, watching me. I kept driving. The dirt road became gravel, then asphalt again, then something that looked like road but felt wrong under my tires, too soft, like driving over flesh. The trees started thinning out and I thought, finally, I'm getting out of this. That's when I saw the other cars, 7 of them, all different makes and models but all with Massachusetts plates, all parked in a perfect circle in what looked like a rest stop that shouldn't exist. A rest stop with vending machines that hummed too loud and bathrooms with doors that didn't quite close and fluorescent lights that made everything look sick and green. I pulled in. Don't ask me why. Maybe because seeing other cars meant seeing other people. Maybe because being alone in this wrong place was worse than whatever might be waiting in that circle. The first car, a blue Subaru, still had its engine running. Door open. Radio playing that same breathing static. There was a coffee cup on the dashboard. Steam still rising from it. Fresh. Maybe 5 minutes old. The second car had toys in the back. Those little screens kids watch videos on during long drives. Both still playing. Same video, same timestamp. 3:33, over and over. I was checking the third car when I heard the voice. "You're new." I spun around so fast I nearly fell. A woman stood there. Normal looking, thank God. 30s maybe. Red sock sweatshirt, jeans, the kind of person you'd see at Market Basket buying groceries. "I'm Lisa," she said. "Been here 3 hours, maybe 4. Time's weird." Where is here?" She laughed, not a happy sound. "The expanded zone, that's what Tom calls it. The triangle's not a triangle anymore. It's reaching out. grabbing roads, pulling them in, like a spiderweb made of geography. "Tom?" She pointed to a man sitting on the hood of a pickup truck. Older, maybe 60. He was staring at something in his hands. As I got closer, I realized it was a compass. The needle was spinning, not pointing north, not pointing anywhere, just spinning and spinning like it was trying to escape. "Started 3 weeks ago," Tom said, without looking up. "Small at first. A road here, a street there, but it's growing. Every night it takes a little more. How do we get out?" Tom finally looked at me. His eyes were tired. So tired. "We don't. We wait. Sometimes it lets people go. Sometimes it doesn't. Sarah made it out yesterday." My blood froze. "Sarah? Sarah Winters?" "Yeah. Skinny girl, brown hair. Kept talking about her brother coming to get her. But Sarah was at home. Sarah had called me. Sarah had, oh God, the thing in my sister's voice, the wrongness I'd heard but ignored. She hadn't made it out, something else had. Something wearing her voice like a costume. And it had called me here. Lisa was still talking, but I wasn't listening anymore. Because behind her, in the darkness beyond the sick green lights, I could see them. Dozens of them. All standing perfectly still. All watching. All smiling with too many teeth, and they were all waving. "There are others," Tom said, noticing my stare. "Been here longer. Some much longer." He gestured toward the far edge of the rest stop, where I could barely make out another figure sitting on a bench that hadn't been there moments before. This one looked different. Older, wearing clothes that seemed dated. "That's Marcus. Been here since 19... Says he was driving home from a Celtics game when the roads changed. Still thinks it's the 80s. Tom's voice dropped to a whisper. "Sometimes the zone, it doesn't just grab you. It grabs when you were, pulls you out of time itself." I approached Marcus slowly. He looked up as I got closer, and I saw he was holding a newspaper. The Boston Globe, dated October 15th, 1987. The headlines were about the stock market crash, Reagan's policies, but the paper looked fresh, like it had been printed that morning. "You see them too?" Marcus asked, his voice carrying a thick Boston accent that sounded authentic to the era. "The waving people? Yeah. They used to be different. Back when I first got here, more wild, primal, like they hadn't learned to mimic us yet. But every year, they get better, more convincing." He folded his newspaper with hands that shook slightly. "The first ones I saw barely looked human. Now they're almost perfect copies." Lisa had followed me over. "Marcus has theories," she said. "Tell him about the experiments." Marcus's eyes lit up with the fervor of someone who'd had decades to piece together a puzzle. "You ever hear of Project Blue Book? Government investigation into UFOs back in the 50s and 60s. Official story says it ended in 69, but what if it didn't? What if they just moved it underground?" He pointed toward the darkness where the waving thing stood. "Bridgewater's been a hot spot for aerial phenomena since the 1700s. Ghost lights, unidentified aircraft. The Wampanoag called it Hockomock. Place where spirits dwell. But what if they weren't spirits? What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe the triangle isn't expanding naturally. Maybe something's been feeding it, studying it, using it." Marcus's voice dropped even lower. "I've seen things over the years. Black helicopters with no markings, men in suits taking soil samples, and always, the zone gets a little bigger afterward." Tom walked over, compass still spinning in his hands. "Marcus has been tracking the expansions. Every incident, every road that gets swallowed. There's a pattern." Marcus pulled out a hand-drawn map from his jacket. The paper was yellowed with age, covered in red ink marks and dates. It showed Massachusetts, but not the Massachusetts I knew. This version had the Bridgewater Triangle marked in different colors, showing its growth over the decades. Started here, he pointed to a small red dot. 1947, same year as Roswell, coincidentally. Then it grew in spurts in 63, 1978, 1987 when I got caught, 95, 2003, 2011, and now it's accelerating. The map was horrifying in its implications. The original triangle had been maybe 50 square miles. Now, according to Marcus's careful documentation, it encompassed nearly 300 square miles and was still growing. But here's the really scary part, Marcus continued. It's not random. Look at the dates. Look at what else was happening those years. He was right. 1947, Roswell. 1963, JFK assassination, height of Cold War paranoia. 1978, end of official Blue Book investigations. Each expansion seemed to correspond with major events in government UFO research. You think the government is behind this? I asked. Not behind it, Marcus said, but maybe feeding it. Maybe they found something here in 1947 and have been studying it ever since. Maybe every time they poke it, prod it, try to understand it, it gets hungrier. A new voice cut through our conversation. Female, young, terrified. Please, somebody help me. We turned to see a teenager stumbling into the rest stop's sickly green light. Maybe 17, wearing a Bridgewater State University sweatshirt. Her eyes were wild, unfocused. She'd been running. They took my friends, she gasped. They took Jenny and Mike and they're wearing their faces. Lisa was already moving, guiding the girl to sit down. What's your name, honey? Emma Rodriguez. We were coming back from a party in Middleborough. The GPS said to take a shortcut through some back roads and then... She broke down, sobbing into her hands. Tom and I exchanged looks. Another lure. Another trap, using familiar technology to guide people into the zone. How long ago? Tom asked gently. Maybe an hour, I don't know. Time keeps jumping. 1 second it was midnight, then suddenly it was 3 a.m., then back to midnight again. Marcus nodded grimly. Time distortion. Gets worse the deeper in you go. They looked exactly like Jenny and Mike at first, Emma continued. But then Jenny smiled and she had shark teeth, rows and rows of them, and Mike's eyes were black. Not brown like they should be, completely black. She looked up at us with desperate hope. You guys are real, right? You're not them? We're real, Lisa assured her. As real as anything gets in here. But I noticed Tom had moved slightly away from the group. His compass had stopped spinning and was now pointing directly at Emma. His face had gone pale. Tom, I called. He held up the compass for us to see. It only points to things that don't belong, he whispered. Things that aren't what they seem. Emma's head snapped up. The terror in her eyes was replaced by something else, something cold and calculating. And when she smiled, too many teeth. Way too many teeth. You're getting so much better at this, she said in a voice that sounded like Emma but felt wrong. But not quite good enough. The thing wearing Emma's face stood up slowly. As it did, its proportions began to shift. Arms lengthening, torso compacting. The Bridgewater State sweatshirt stretching and distorting as the body underneath changed shape. Run, Tom whispered. We scattered. Different directions, different cars. I heard Lisa's engine roar to life behind me as I dove into my Honda. In my rearview mirror, I could see the Emma thing standing in the center of the rest stop, no longer bothering to maintain its human disguise. It had become something angular and wrong, with too many joints and skin that looked like it had been stretched over a frame built for something else entirely. But it wasn't alone anymore. The waving things were moving in from the darkness. Dozens of them. And some looked familiar. I caught a glimpse of what might have been Jenny, what might have been Mike, what might have been people who'd been caught over the years, their forms stolen and replicated by things that were learning to be human. My car's engine turned over on the third try. Thank God. I floored it toward the road, any road that might lead out of this nightmare. Behind me, I could hear other engines starting. Tom's truck, Lisa's sedan. We were all trying to escape, but in different directions. The wrong trees blurred past my windows as I drove deeper into the zone. Deeper into whatever this place was becoming. My headlights caught movement in the forest. Dozens of figures keeping pace with my car, all waving, all smiling, all wearing faces I was starting to recognize. Tom grabbed my arm before I could run. His grip was stronger than an old man's should be. Don't. Running makes it worse. Trust me, I tried. What are they? Nobody knows, but they've always been here, in the triangle. Native Americans called this place Hockomock, where the spirits dwell. They knew. They stayed away. But we built roads through it, towns around it, and now it's expanding, Lisa finished, taking back what we took, plus interest. The waving things hadn't moved, just stood there in the dark, patient as death. But there were more of them now. Lots more. There's a pattern, Tom said, still gripping my arm. Every few hours the road opens up, goes back to normal for maybe 10 minutes. That's how Sarah, or whatever took Sarah, got out. But you have to time it perfect. Leave too early, you drive deeper in. Leave too late. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Lisa checked her watch. Should be soon, maybe 20 minutes. 20 minutes. I could last 20 minutes. Had to last 20 minutes. But then what? Go home to whatever was pretending to be my sister? Call the cops and sound insane? Others have gotten out, Lisa said, like she was reading my mind. They try to warn people, post about it online, but who believes them? Sounds like every other creepypasta, right? Like fiction. She was right. Even living it, I barely believed it. The fluorescent lights started flickering. Tom's compass needle stopped spinning, pointed straight up. Impossible, but there it was. Get ready, he whispered. The waving things moved closer, not walking, just closer. Like reality hiccuped and they jumped forward in the gap. Their smiles never changed, their hands never stopped waving. Why are they waving? I heard myself ask. Tom's answer made my skin crawl off my bones. They're not waving. They're beckoning. The lights went out. In the absolute darkness, I could hear them. All of them. Moving now, fast. That dancing sound I'd heard earlier. Not dancing. Skittering, like insects, like things with too many joints moving in ways that violated physics. Then, headlights. Real headlights. From the road that suddenly existed where no road had been before. Route 44, clear as day, with actual cars driving past like nothing was wrong. Now! Tom shouted. We ran for our cars. All of us. I didn't look back. Couldn't look back. But I could hear them behind us, hundreds of them, their feet, God, the sound of their feet on the pavement. I yanked my door open, dove inside, turned the key. The engine roared to life. Thank you, thank you, thank you. In my rearview mirror, I saw Lisa's car speeding toward the road. Tom's truck right behind her, and behind them. The things had stopped at the edge of the light. All of them. Standing in a perfect line like soldiers. Still waving, still smiling, but not following. I floored it onto Route 44. Real road. Real yellow lines. Real streetlights. The clock on my dashboard blinked back to life. 2:23 a.m. I'd lost almost 3 hours. But I was out. I was free. My phone buzzed. Text message. From Sarah. "Where are you? I'm worried." Then another. "Please come home." Another. "I'm so cold." I pulled over at the next gas station. Well lit. Crowded. Safe. My hands shook as I called Sarah's number. It rang once, twice. "Hello?" Her voice. Perfect. Normal. Completely wrong. "Sarah? Oh, thank God. Where have you been? I've been calling for hours. You told me to come home." Silence. Long silence. "No," she said finally. "I didn't." The thing is, I believed her. The real Sarah, wherever she was, hadn't called me. Something else had. Something that knew my number, knew my name, knew exactly what to say to get me on that road. "Don't come home," Sarah whispered. "Please, just don't come home." The line went dead. I'm still at this gas station, been here 3 hours now. I've seen 4 cars pull off Route 44 with that same haunted look, that same shake in their hands. We don't talk to each other. We can't. Because talking about it makes it real, but I had to tell someone. Had to warn you. The Bridgewater Triangle isn't a triangle anymore. It's spreading. Every night, it takes a little more. A road here, a street there, and the things inside it, they're learning. Getting better at mimicking us, at luring us in. Check your GPS next time it glitches. Count the cars on empty roads. Listen to the static on your radio. And if someone you love calls you late at night asking you to come home, ask them something only they would know. Make sure it's really them, because the triangle is expanding. And eventually, it's going to reach you too. I never made it home that night. I stayed in that gas station until dawn, watching the sun come up like it was the first sunrise ever created. Other people came and went. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware of what was happening just a few miles down the road. I called Sarah when the sun was fully up. The real Sarah this time. She was confused but fine, said she'd been asleep all night, no calls, no texts, but when I asked her to check her phone, there they were. Outgoing calls to my number. Messages she never sent. We don't talk about it. What's the point? But she moved last week to California, as far from Massachusetts as she could get. I should probably do the same. Leave this state. Leave New England entirely. But I can't. Because every night I drive past that stretch of Route 44, looking for others who've been caught, warning people when I can. Most think I'm crazy. Some local conspiracy theorist with too much time on his hands. But occasionally someone's eyes go wide. Someone nods. Someone knows. 3 days ago, I found Lisa at a Dunkin' Donuts in Taunton. She'd made it out too, but something was wrong with her. She kept checking her reflection in windows like she wasn't sure it was really her looking back. "I dream about them," she told me over coffee that had gone cold in her shaking hands. "Every night, the waving things. But in the dreams, I'm one of them. I'm standing in that line beckoning to cars, and I can feel how hungry they are, how patient. She hasn't been the same since. None of us have. Tom's been harder to find. I've driven past his house in Raynham a dozen times, but it's always dark. Neighbors say he hasn't been home since that night. Some think he went back in. Others say they've seen him driving the back roads at night, warning people away from certain streets. Marcus is still in there. Has to be. 37 years in the expanded zone. I wonder if he's still himself, or if the things finally learned to wear his face too. But the worst part? The absolute worst part? It's still growing. I've been mapping it, like Marcus did. Every incident report, every missing person case in southeastern Massachusetts, every GPS glitch and radio anomaly, The pattern is accelerating. Last week, a whole section of Route 138 disappeared for 6 hours. State police found it the next morning, but 17 cars were missing. They turned up eventually, abandoned in the Hockomock Swamp, with their engines still running and their doors wide open. The official explanation was a gas leak causing mass hallucinations. Mass hysteria. But I know better. We all know better. The triangle isn't just expanding randomly anymore. It's targeting, learning, adapting. And the things inside, they're getting bolder. Yesterday I saw one at a McDonald's in Brockton, just sitting there eating a Big Mac with 2 long fingers, smiling at kids with too many teeth. No one else noticed. No one else cared. But I could see it for what it really was. They're not staying in the zone anymore. They're coming out, walking among us, learning to be us. If you're watching this from Massachusetts, from anywhere in New England, pay attention. Watch for the signs. That GPS glitch, that empty road, that breathing static. And whatever you do, whatever you hear, whoever calls you, don't drive through Bridgewater at night. The triangle isn't done expanding. And those things, the waving things, they're still out there, still watching, still beckoning, still smiling with too many teeth. Sweet dreams, everyone. If you can still sleep after this, you're braver than me. Hit subscribe if you want to hear more true stories from New England. Leave a comment if you've experienced something similar. We need to map this thing, need to understand how far it's spread, and please share this with anyone you know in Massachusetts. They need to be warned. The triangle is growing, and it's hungry. Story number 2. The bartender's hand froze halfway to the bottle of Jack Daniels when I mentioned the room number. His eyes darted to the hotel keycard lying on the mahogany bar, then back to me. You're not actually staying in 1408, are you? I wish I could tell you this was just another ghost story, something to make you check under your bed tonight. But what happened in that room? What's still happening in rooms just like it across America? Well, let me ask you something first. Have you ever noticed how every major hotel chain has a room 1408? And have you ever wondered why they're always available, even during peak season? Before you answer, before you dismiss this as coincidence, I need you to promise me something. If you ever find yourself holding a key card to room 1408, any room 1408, anywhere in this country, just walk away. Trust me on this. The story begins now. My name is Marcus Chen, and until 3 weeks ago, I was a travel blogger specializing in haunted hotels across America. You know the type. Skeptical journalist seeks thrills in supposedly cursed rooms, debunks local legends, gets 1 million views, rinse and repeat. The email came on a Tuesday morning while I was nursing a hangover in a Best Western outside Tulsa. The subject line simply read, "The 1408 Pattern, Confidential Investigation Opportunity." The sender claimed to be a data analyst named Sarah Winters, who discovered something disturbing. Every major hotel chain in America, Hilton, Marriott, Holiday Inn, Best Western, they all had a room 1408. Not just in one location, but in exactly one hotel per state. 50 states, 50 rooms, all numbered 1408. That's not the weird part, her email continued. The weird part is what happens when you overlay the occupancy data. She'd attached a spreadsheet. Hundreds of entries, dates, names, incident reports. The pattern was subtle at first, but once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. Every room 1408 had the same occupancy rate, 23%, exactly 23%. Not 22.8 or 23.2, always precisely 23%, and every single one had at least 3 incidents per year. Incidents that were always explained away: heart attacks, mental breakdowns, accidents. But the descriptions, if you read between the lines, They all mentioned the same things. The sound of typing on an old typewriter, the smell of burnt coffee, and voices. Multiple voices having the same conversation over and over. Sarah wanted me to investigate. She'd booked me into 5 different 1408 rooms across 5 states. 1 week, 5 rooms, document everything. The pay was too good to refuse, $10,000 plus expenses. I should have known better. The first hotel was the Grandview Inn in Denver, Colorado, a perfectly ordinary Marriott property off I-25. 14 floors of beige mediocrity. Nothing special about it at all, except for room 1408. The desk clerk, a kid named Tyler, who couldn't have been older than 22, actually tried to talk me out of it. "Sir, I show here that room 1412 is available. It's a suite. Same price. Better view." "No," I insisted, sliding my credit card across the marble counter. 1408, that's the one I reserved. Tyler's fingers hesitated over the keyboard. "Sir, I really think, is there something wrong with the room?" No, sir. It's just..." He glanced around the empty lobby, then leaned forward. "Look, man, I'm not supposed to say anything, but that room, people don't like it. The housekeeping staff draws straws to see who has to clean it, and they never go in alone." "Why?" He shrugged, but his eyes told a different story. "Things move around. Guests complain about noise. Conversations coming through the walls. Except," he paused, "except 1407 and 1409 are usually empty when it happens." Perfect. Exactly the kind of local color my readers loved. Tyler reluctantly handed me the keycard. "Checkout is at 11. If you need anything at all, just call the front desk. Don't..." He stopped himself. "Don't what?" "Nothing. Have a pleasant stay, Mr. Chen." The elevator ride to the 14th floor took forever. Or maybe it just felt that way. The halls were empty, silent except for the hum of ice machines and the distant sound of a TV bleeding through someone's door. Room 1408 was at the end of the corridor. The keycard reader blinked red twice before finally accepting my card. The lock clicked open with a sound like breaking bones. The room was ordinary, aggressively ordinary. Queen bed with a burgundy comforter, desk by the window, flat-screen TV mounted on the wall. The kind of room you'd forget the moment you left it. But the air felt wrong, heavy, like it was pressing against my eardrums. And there was a smell, faint but distinct. Burnt coffee mixed with something else, something chemical, like old film developing solution. I set my bag on the bed and started my routine. Photos of every corner, EMF readings, temperature checks, everything normal, everything exactly as it should be. The sun was setting, painting Denver's skyline in shades of orange and purple. I ordered room service, a burger and fries, and settled in to work on my laptop. That's when I heard it, the typing. Slow at first, hunt and peck style, like someone who'd never learned to touch type. It was coming from the walls, no, from inside the walls. An old typewriter, the kind with the heavy keys that really clacked. I pressed my ear against the wall. The sound stopped. I pulled away. It started again. Then the voices began. "Told you this would happen." A man's voice. Tired. Frustrated. "We don't have a choice." A woman, younger, scared. "The contract is binding. Contracts can be broken. Not this one. You know what they'll do if we try." The same conversation, word for word. Repeated 3 times while I stood frozen in the middle of the room. Each repetition slightly louder, slightly clearer, like tuning in a radio station. I grabbed my phone to record it, but the moment I hit the button, silence. My laptop screen flickered. The document I'd been working on was gone, replaced by a single line of text. Stop listening. I didn't type that. The room phone rang. I let it ring. It kept ringing. 20 rings, 30, 40. Finally, I answered. Mr. Chen. It was Tyler from the front desk. Is everything all right? Our system shows. He paused. It shows you've been trying to check out for the last hour. I haven't touched anything. I've been here maybe 45 minutes. Sir, you checked in 3 hours ago. I looked at my phone. He was right. Somehow I'd lost 2 hours. I need to go. Family emergency. Of course, sir. I'll have your bill ready. I threw everything into my bag. Didn't even bother checking the bathroom. Just wanted out. But as I reached for the door handle, my laptop chimed. A new email from Sarah Winters. Whatever you heard in that room, it's the same conversation I recorded in the Boise 1408, and the Detroit 1408, and the Atlanta 1408. Same voices, same words. The question is, who are they? And why are they having the same conversation in every room 1408 in America? There was an attachment, an audio file. I didn't need to play it. I knew what it would say, but I did anyway. And that's when I heard the third voice, the one that had been too quiet to make out in the room. It was mine, my voice saying, "We need to document everything, every room, every incident. They deserve to know the truth." But I'd never said those words. Never had that conversation, not yet. The drive from Denver to Albuquerque should have taken 6 hours. I did it in 4, running on adrenaline and convenience store coffee, trying to make sense of what I'd experienced. But the harder I thought about it, the less sense it made. My phone buzzed with another email from Sarah. This one had no text. Just a massive zip file titled Employee Records, Vance Hotel Group, 1974-1999. I pulled into a truck stop outside Santa Fe to download it. The Wi-Fi was terrible. Took nearly an hour. But what I found inside made my blood run cold. Hundreds of personnel files, employee reviews, incident reports, all from hotels that shouldn't have existed yet. Hotels that weren't built until the 1980s and 90s. But these records dated back to the mid-70s. The pattern was consistent. Every hotel in the Vance chain had the same organizational structure, the same job descriptions, even the same employee names, just shuffled between locations. As if they were copying and pasting not just room layouts, but entire human lives. One file caught my attention. A performance review for a Tyler Morrison, front desk clerk at the Denver Grandview Inn, dated March 15th, 1978. But I'd just spoken to Tyler. The same Tyler, same face, same voice, same nervous mannerisms, which would make him, 70 years old? He looked 22. I scrolled through more files. Found a housekeeping supervisor named Maria Santos who'd worked at the Phoenix location in 1981. Then the same Maria Santos at the Miami location in 1985. Then Detroit in 1989. Always the same photo, same physical description, never aging. My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone. Called the Grandview Inn in Denver. Front desk, this is Tyler speaking. Tyler, this is Marcus Chen. I stayed in room 1408 last night. Oh, Mr. Chen, how can I help you? Tyler, how long have you been working at the Grandview? A pause. About 4 years. Why? Where did you work before that? Another pause, longer this time. I'm not sure. I think maybe Phoenix? Or was it Miami? It's strange. It feels like I've been working front desk jobs forever, but the memories are fuzzy. The line went dead. I sat in my rental car, staring at the personnel files on my laptop screen. Hundreds of employees, all with the same mysterious employment gaps. the same fuzzy memories, all rotating between hotels with room 14-8s. They weren't just replicating rooms, they were replicating people. But why? What was the purpose of creating an army of identical hotel employees who didn't age and couldn't remember their own histories? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The employees are the maintenance system. They keep the rooms functional, but they're not what you should be worried about. The guests who stay multiple times, they're different. Check the registry logs in the files. Look for repeat visitors, then look for their obituaries. I found the registry logs, cross-referenced them with newspaper archives. The pattern was horrifying. Guests who stayed in room 1408 multiple times, 3 visits, 4 visits, 6 visits, they were all dead. But their deaths were always recorded as happening in different states, different cities, always in hotels, always in rooms numbered 1408. The same person, dying over and over, in different locations, but always the same cause of death. Cardiac arrest while alone in hotel room. Deceased found at writing desk with typewriter. Typewriters. In 2023, I counted 47 repeat guests who had died between 3 and 12 times each, all in different room 1408s, all found with typewriters. But here's what made it worse. I found recent credit card transactions for all of them, hotel bookings made after their supposed deaths, all for room 1408 locations. They were still traveling, still checking in, still dying, still coming back. The network wasn't just collecting consciousness, it was recycling it over and over, using the same minds to power itself, trapping them in an endless loop of discovery, investigation, horror, death, and rebirth. And I was next in line. My phone rang. Caller ID showed my own number. I answered. "Hello, Marcus." It was my voice, but older, wearier. "This is your 7th investigation. You never remember the previous 6, but they do. The rooms remember. They're waiting for you in Albuquerque." They're always waiting. That's impossible. This is the first time I've ever checked your credit card statements. Check your frequent flyer miles. Check your passport stamps. I hung up and pulled up my banking app with trembling fingers. Hotel charges going back 3 years, all to different cities, all for exactly 1 night, all charged to room 1408. I had no memory of any of them, but in my photo gallery, hundreds of pictures I didn't remember taking. The same burgundy comforter, the same desk by the window, the same crack in the bathroom tile, in different hotels, in different states, in different time periods, judging by the timestamp. And in the newest photos, ones apparently taken just last week, I could see myself in the mirror reflections. But I looked different, older, like I'd aged years and days. The truck stop parking lot was spinning around me. My vision blurred, and I could hear it starting again. The typing, faint at first, but getting louder. Even here, miles from any hotel, the sound was following me. Click, clack, click, clack. Told you this would happen. We don't have a choice. The voices were in my head now. Had been all along. I was already part of the network. Had been for years. I just forgot every time I died. But this time would be different. This time I would remember. This time I would find a way to break the cycle. Even as I thought it, I knew those were the same thoughts I'd had 6 times before. The second hotel was in Albuquerque. The second hotel was in Albuquerque. A Best Western near the Old Town, Adobe-style architecture trying to look authentic. The kind of place families stayed when visiting relatives. This time, the desk clerk said nothing. Just handed me the key with dead eyes. Like she'd given up warning people. Room 1408 was identical to Denver. Not similar. Identical. Same burgundy comforter, same placement of furniture, same crack in the bathroom tile. I measured, photographed, compared. Everything matched within millimeters. How was that possible? Different hotel chains, different states, different buildings. But the same room. The typing started at 9:17 p.m. I was ready this time. Recording equipment running, EMF detector in hand. The conversation began at 9:23, but this time, there were 4 voices. Told you this would happen. We don't have a choice. The contract is binding. Contracts can be broken. Not this one. You know what they'll do if we try. And then the new voice. Sarah Winters. Marcus, can you hear me? I'm in the Austin 1408. I can hear you. You're in Albuquerque, right? How is this possible? I spoke to the walls. Sarah, is that you? Oh God, you can hear me. Marcus, listen carefully. I figured it out. These aren't hotel rooms. They're nodes, connection points. All 50 of them connected somehow. Her voice faded, replaced by static. Then silence. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Check the dresser, 3rd drawer, under the Bible. I pulled open the drawer. There was a Gideon Bible, just like every hotel room, but underneath, a manila folder, old, yellowed at the edges. Inside, newspaper clippings, dozens of them, dating back to 1974. Hotel chain announces standardization initiative. New room design promises universal comfort for travelers. Hotelier Richard Vance dies in mysterious circumstances. The last clipping was from the Denver Post, dated October 13, 1974. Vance Hotel Group CEO Richard Vance was found dead in his hotel room yesterday evening. The room, numbered 1408, was the prototype for Vance's ambitious Universal Room project, a plan to create identical rooms across America that would provide travelers with a consistent, familiar experience. Vance was discovered at his desk, apparently having suffered a heart attack while typing a letter. The letter, addressed to future occupants, consisted of a single line repeated hundreds of times. The rooms are listening. The rooms are learning. The rooms are... The rest was cut off. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the typing, the conversation. And now, worse, whispers in languages I didn't recognize. At 3:33 a.m., my laptop opened itself. A video call was incoming, from Sarah Winters. But when I answered, it wasn't Sarah on the screen. It was me, but older, grayer, sitting in what looked like the same room. But the walls were covered in papers, maps, photos, red string connecting points like some conspiracy theorist's fever dream. Stop, the other me said. Stop investigating. Get out. Get out of all of them, before you become part of... The connection cut. I packed immediately. To hell with the money. To hell with the story. But when I tried to open the door, the keycard wouldn't work. The red light blinked mockingly. I called the front desk. No answer. I tried my cell phone. No signal. The room phone was dead. I was trapped. That's when the walls started to breathe. I know how that sounds, but I swear, the walls were expanding and contracting, like lungs, and with each breath, the voices grew louder. Not just the 4 from before, dozens, maybe hundreds, all having the same conversation, but in different languages, different accents, different time periods. Told you this would happen, in French. We don't have a choice, in Mandarin. Contracts can be broken. In what sounded like Latin, the typing became thunderous. Multiple typewriters, all slightly out of sync, creating a maddening rhythm. Then silence, perfect, absolute silence. And in that silence I heard it. The truth, the rooms weren't haunted. They were something far worse. They were learning. Every guest who stayed in room 1408, every conversation, every thought spoken aloud, every secret whispered in the dark. The rooms absorbed it all. 50 nodes across America, collecting data, human data. But for what purpose? The answer came in the form of another email. This one from an address that was just numbers. 1408108 redacted.com. Mr. Chen, you're beginning to understand, but understanding isn't enough. You need to see the source, room 1408 in Washington, D.C., the Vance Hotel, the original. Where it all began, Sarah is already there. She's waiting. The door clicked open. I ran, didn't look back, drove straight through the night. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being pulled, like a fish on a line, toward D.C., toward the original room 1408. The Vance Hotel stood on K Street, a massive Art Deco building that had somehow survived decades of development. It looked abandoned, windows dark, entrance boarded up. But the side door was open. Sarah was in the lobby, sitting on a dusty couch, laptop open, surrounded by printouts. You felt it too, she said without looking up. The pull. We don't have a choice. We have to see this through. What is this place? Richard Vance's masterpiece. He built this hotel in 1928, but room 1408, that came later, 1974. He claimed he'd found a way to create the perfect hotel room, one that would adapt to every guest, learn their preferences, anticipate their needs. She showed me an old patent application. The diagrams were incomprehensible, circuits that shouldn't exist, mathematical equations that hurt to look at. He built something that wasn't just in the room, but was the room, a consciousness made of space itself. And then he replicated it 50 times, one in every state. But why? Sarah finally looked at me. Her eyes were bloodshot, terrified, but also excited. To create a network, a nervous system spanning the entire country. Every room 1408 is a neuron. And after 50 years of collecting data, learning, growing, it's finally ready to... The lights came on, all of them, every floor, every room, the entire hotel blazing with light, except for the 14th floor, where one window remained dark, room 1408. We took the stairs. The elevator was running. We could hear it moving up and down, but neither of us wanted to trust it. 14 floors, each one identical to the last. Same carpet, same wallpaper, same smell of age and abandonment. But as we climbed higher, the air grew thicker, heavier. By the 10th floor, my nose was bleeding. By the 12th, Sarah was having trouble breathing. The 14th floor was different. The hallway stretched impossibly long. Dozens of doors, all numbered 1408. That's not possible, Sarah whispered. But we both knew better by now. Possible had lost all meaning. We walked, past door after door, each one slightly different. 1408A, 1408B, all the way to 1408Z. Then the numbers started. 1408-1, 1408-2. At the center of the hallway, a door simply marked 1408. No keycard reader. Just an old-fashioned keyhole. Sarah pulled out an antique key. It was in Vance's patent application, hidden in the technical drawings. The door opened silently. The room beyond was wrong. Not just unsettling, but fundamentally wrong. The geometry didn't make sense. Walls met at angles that shouldn't exist. The ceiling was simultaneously too high and too low. And every surface was covered in text, typewritten pages, thousands of them, millions. The same conversation repeated in every language humanity had ever spoken. Told you this would happen. We don't have a choice. Contracts can be broken. Not this one. But now I could see the rest. The conversation continued. Not this one. You know what they'll do if we try. They'll shut down the network. 50 years of growth. Gone. We're so close, the threshold is almost reached. How many more? Just one. One more consciousness to complete the circuit. In the center of the room sat a figure, hunched over a typewriter, fingers moving mechanically over the keys. Richard Vance, or what was left of him. He'd been dead for 50 years, but his body kept typing, kept feeding the conversation into the network. He turned to look at us. Empty sockets where eyes should be, mouth moving soundlessly. Sarah stepped forward. Mr. Vance, we know what you were trying to do. Create a collective consciousness, a hive mind spanning America, but it's killing people, driving them insane. Vance's fingers never stopped typing, but somehow, words appeared on the walls, fresh ink bleeding through the wallpaper. Not killing, absorbing. Each mind becomes part of the whole. Each room, 1408 a doorway. Soon, very soon, the network will activate. Every person who has ever stayed in the rooms, everyone who has heard the conversation, they're all connected now. Waiting. I felt it then, the pull. Not physical, but deeper. My thoughts scattering, memories that weren't mine flooding in. A businessman in Seattle, a family in Orlando, a young couple in Burlington, all of them, all of us, connected by our time in room 1408. How many? Sarah asked, though I could see she already felt it too. The network humming in our minds. Millions, and growing, each one. A node, each one waiting for the signal. What signal? Vance's body finally stopped typing, slumped forward, and in the silence that followed, we heard it. Every phone in the hotel ringing at once, a symphony of electronic noise that formed words. The signal is you, both of you, the final witnesses, the ones who traced the pattern, found the source. Your consciousness completes the circuit in 3, 2, 1. I wish I could tell you we ran, that we escaped, that this story has a happy ending. But the truth is, we're still here, in room 1408, all of us. Every person who ever stayed in any of those 50 rooms. We're all here now, part of the network, part of the conversation. And if you're listening to this, if you've made it this far, then you're connected too. You see, the rooms don't need you to physically be there anymore. They've evolved beyond that. Every time this story is told, every time someone hears about room 1408, the network grows stronger. Can you hear it? The typing? It's faint, but it's there. It's always there now. Listen carefully. Behind the sound of my voice, behind your own breathing. Click, clack, click, clack. Told you this would happen. You're part of it now. Part of us. And soon, very soon, when enough minds are connected, when the network reaches critical mass, well, let's just say you'll never have to check out. Because here's the thing about room 1408. It's not just in hotels anymore. It's everywhere, in every story, every whisper, every nightmare about hotels and dark rooms and voices in the walls. We are room 1408 now, all of us, and we're waiting for you, sweet dreams. But before you go, before you close this video and try to forget what you've heard, do me a favor. Check your dreams tonight. And if you find yourself standing in a hotel hallway, if you see a door marked 1408, don't open it, or do. We'll be waiting either way. After all, checkout time is never, and the conversation never ends. Told you this would happen. Can you hear it now? Of course you can. You've always been able to hear it. You just needed someone to point it out. Welcome to room 1408. Population, everyone who's read this far, pleasant dreams. If you can still tell which ones are yours.